Good evening and welcome to another edition, another installment of the MBtv Cunha Foundation Debates Series. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about a pivotal area of our economy, an important sector. We are joined by a distinguished panel of top-notch experts. I'd like to thank you, all of you joining us here at Cunha Foundation in person, those joining us via Facebook Live. We will be talking about MICE, meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibitions, and events. The COVID-19 pandemic took a heavy toll on this industry amid the restrictions. Hybrid, online, offline events such as this one that we are holding have become a trend as we transition into the post-pandemic era, which challenges and opportunities lie ahead for the industry. To answer this question and many other questions, we are joined, as I was saying, by a panel of industry players and experts from Macau and Singapore to discuss the way ahead for the industry. We are carrying out in this event and this in cooperation between Macau Business Magazine, MBtv, and Cunha Foundation. The panel of experts joining us here comprises Bruno Simões, President of the Macau Meetings, Incentives and Special Events Association, Todd Cai, Vice President of the Macau Association of Convention, Exhibition and Tourism Sectors, on behalf of Mr. Alan Ho, the President of the Macau Association of Convention, Exhibition and Tourism Sectors, Glenn McCartney, Associate Professor in Integrated Resort and Tourism Management at the Faculty of Business Administration of the University of Macau, and joining us via Zoom, live from Singapore, we welcome Florence Chua, Managing Director of the Professional Convention Management Association Asia Pacific. Welcome, thank you very much. We're honored and thrilled about holding this event here and talking about the industry, MICE, as I was saying, meetings, incentives, conventions and exhibitions and events. And let me start by bringing Bruno Simões into the conversation. In fact, Bruno first came to us with a suggestion to hold a talk on this topic. That was perhaps nearly 2 years ago. Almost. And here we are, Bruno. Well, the last couple of years surely haven't been kind for pretty much most sectors of the economy and the society. But the last couple of months, or the last few months, have shown things gradually moving forward here in Macau. Could you please share with us the state of the union of the MICE and events industry?
Yes, I told you before, I don't want to talk about the past. It's been very negative for all of us in the industry. I think the last few weeks have been nice, but not many changes for Macau, I would say. We have a bubble, we have an open door with mainland China, but the door is only open a little bit. We still don't have groups that could visit Macau. It's not easy, so I rather look into the future. I think it's more important to look into the future and what needs to be prepared now to be ready when the business recovers. And I think everybody understands that the industry everywhere in the world, in Singapore, in the neighboring countries, in Macau, in Hong Kong, basically many people left the industry. Hotels, they left agencies, productions. And I think that's our major challenge now, is to attract this talent back. This is the great challenge in the industry everywhere, because those that were more competent, they left because they lost jobs, they lost revenue, so they left to other business. And
some of
in
them
general,
left the
industry,
well.
left. In Macau, they left really Macau, but. Yeah. In general, many people left the industry to do other things. I mean, the MICE industry we're talking now was devastated around the world, but in Macau it still is. So I think that's a great challenge for the business. You can't do MICE business events without good professionals, and good professionals at all levels, not only the meeting planner, but then you need photographers, you need designers, you need 3D designers, you need construction people, production people, audio visuals, and so on and so forth, video editing, and you know, it's all this industry that lives around the business events that was affected, and I think that will be the most challenging part in Macau, very much in Macau, but it is felt in many other countries, even in the US, in Europe. It's what our colleagues are feeling now is that, okay, I have business, I can't deliver. That in many cities is like this, I have to reject business because I can't do it. I don't have the teams I used to have in my company and the suppliers and the partners I have around us to do the events. And this will happen in Macau, for sure, even more. And so it's good that we have two people here related with education, not only Glenn, but Florence with PCMA. Is an association that has excellent education in this area. So I think that's what Macau needs, is to focus on the future of MICE by training the resources and attracting them back to the city.
Thank you, Bruno. Todd Cai, you would subscribe what Bruno Simões said. The issue of a major challenge, which is to bring those people, those skilled staff back to the industry. And also the gap that we may be facing, that would be something in a way good, that would signal a recovery, but will the industry be able to rapidly catch up with what we expect to be an increased demand?
Well, actually, just now Bruno said he's not so willing to tell about the past.
Yes.
But what I'd like to talk about the situation before the pandemic.
All right. Yes.
You see, before the COVID-19, the business of MICE in Macau is always very good and promising. Like WUFE, we have 10 WUFE events, WUFE approved events, and also the ranking for events and meetings always rise by ICA, and also. So that means Macau is a very good promising destination for events for those MICE industry. What I mean is we should have confidence and for the city, for this industry in Macau. The main challenge, I think, is policies and the professionals. For policies, because now our main client is from mainland China, and of course the government now is facing the international market. But for the first step, we have to solve the problem about the visa, and also now is about the policies with COVID-19. All those problems we have to solve the first step. Now we have some very good preferential policy involved with Hanqing, but we have to study what is the best way to integrate with Hanqing, to make Hanqing and Macau as one city. So that will make it better and more attractive for all the event planners all around the world. Not only in China, but all around the world.
Thank you, Todd. Professor Glenn McCartney, you've been looking into this, you've been studying, writing extensively, publishing articles, doing research on MICE, on business tourism. What's your take on where we are?
Well, I couldn't agree more with what the panel has said so far. I mean, the issue about MICE looking forward, we do look at the past, some of the historical evidence. It's through that we can address some of the things that we have not addressed, because through that we will be able to springboard better. But there's many moving parts, and I guess throughout this discussion, this panel tonight, we're going to look at some of the key issues. Talent is an obvious, absolutely, we've lost a lot of talent throughout not just the MICE industry, but the supporting hotels, sectors, and the venues and supplier F&B, and all that is very much important part of the MICE sector. And as we know, the MICE industry particularly is the type of customer are really high wanting, so you really have to deliver a certain level of service to that particular customer. So again, talent is absolutely one thing. If we were to look ahead for Macau, is we needed to look at a talent strategy of bringing people back and our recruiting within, that we can develop the industry. Without that, that's the soft skills. Those are really, really important for us. So I'm glad that was brought up. I think one of the issues also you brought up is policy. And policies, for example, the issue of COVID-19 policies, where people have to quarantine on arrival, those would have to be removed really for the industry to really be relaunched, rejuvenated in the future. And of course, at the moment, we're dealing with the travel corridor with China for 2 years, and we continue with that. And we can build on the MICE industry, I guess, throughout that for now. But I guess to truly, I think tonight we're going to look at, for example, the gaming concessions. One of the issues they've been asked to do is a shopping list of things that they've been asked to do. One of the issues is the MICE and events industry. So I think that debate has to be part of our discussion. I think it will be. And I think that will truly be catapulted if we can remove the restrictions. That is absolutely part of it. So apart from being a conversation tonight as a what-if statement, is like when it happens, will we be ready? Do we have this time of rethink, reset? And given that time of reflection, and I've been saying it for the last few years, what are we doing at this time to be ready to, when the doors come down, we are ready to go? And I think we can have that conversation. I'm glad Singapore that we have discussion, because it's one of my case studies. I look towards their recovery track, particularly the last 6 months, first 6 months of this year, phenomenal recovery because of what is happening. But I won't I won't share it. But I think it's interesting that we have that.
Thank you, Professor Glenn McCartney. And then hooking up on that, I will bring now Florence Troy into the conversation, joining us from Singapore via Zoom. Florence is Managing Director of the Professional Convention Management Association Asia Pacific. Florence, tell us about this transition, because it's fair to say that Singapore is at least a couple of steps ahead of Macau in this respect. Tell us about this transition from where you were before, also facing strict restrictions, then developing hybrid events, and now I was looking at this headline, in-person events still in demand as Singapore MICE activity rebounds, robust lineup of more than 60 international events for the second half of 2022. Please join us and share with us this journey, especially over the last few months.
Thank you, Bruno. Thank you for having me. Now, before I talk about Singapore, let me just share that the global lens, right? PCMA, as you may know, we are headquartered in Chicago, with the Asia Pacific office headquartered in Singapore. Now, I think from an Asia Pacific standpoint, we sometimes look at Singapore as the poster child for recovery. But when you look at global and how the MICE or business event industry has recovered, it started in Q3 last year from Europe, from United States. So if you put that into perspective, right until Q1 this year, before Singapore reopened, there was a lot of frustration locally as well. Like, when are we recovering? The rest of the world is recovering. What is Asia doing? So there was also a lot of that stress. But I think what's important here from a policy standpoint, whether is it Singapore, whether is it Australia in the region, I think, and what we see globally, I think we need the government to move forward in a very definitive and certain manner, and not take 1 step forward, 2 steps back. Because this is detrimental to any business planning, to any events planning or conference planning around the world. No organizers will go to a place that they get shut down within 24 hours or within 3 days. And that's, I think, what that Singapore did well. So Singapore did not go into a full reopening. When they started in April, they started phases of opening. They said, first we open to a group of 300. Then we go up to groups of 500, 800, 2,000. It was incremental, but there was a commitment from the government that we are not going to flip backwards until it's truly necessary. Truly necessary. So I think there was a confidence that was built very strongly. Now, the other thing that I think what Singapore really did well was also from a government standpoint, ensuring that there were these kind of blockbuster events, right? I mean, if you think about F1, just last month, how everything was built around F1 and brought the entire city back to life, brought the entire pricing market back to life. So if you look at the hotel rates, the hotels were back to pre-COVID, higher than pre-COVID rates ever. It was impossible during that week to find a room here that doesn't cost you $1,000 Sing. So that was what it is. I mean, I won't go into a lot of details of every single component, but I would really say that the policy, was really, really important in helping the industry move forward in a very certain manner. I agree with all the panelists who were talking about talent. When we speak to all our industry peers and partners in the marketplace today, everybody knew that the pent-up demand was going to hit and was going to hit strong. But nobody realized how strong that hit was going to be when all the backlog of events, plus all the new events that could happen, all started coming at the same time. No venues could handle that. No suppliers could handle that. No agencies could handle that because everybody was at maybe about 50% of what you used to be, or even at 70, 80% as you were ramping up. But right now, that volume is maybe easily double that, right? Because you have backlog plus the existing plan. So coming back to getting ready from a talent point of view, it's not just about hiring or training, but it's also about looking at collaboration, how you could work together across your entire supply chain so that hotels and venues and agencies and production houses, you're helping each other, because I don't think we'll ramp up in time for that kind of demand.
Thank you very much, Florence. Really, really interesting and valuable what you're sharing with us. It gives us the feeling, I guess, that let's hope we are in Macau just like in the same place as Singapore was just before the reopening. And now we need to learn from these practices, best practices for sure. And also, Bruno, Florence was talking about key points in terms of getting ready for what's coming when it comes to, of course, human resources, talent, but also collaboration and an integrated approach in the industry and the different segments of the industry, directly, indirectly related to the events sector. How do you envisage the next step in this respect in Macau?
Well, I think historically in Macau, when we go up, we tend to go up very fast, right?
Yes.
That's what everybody is expecting. But I think by what I've been seeing, even the hotel teams, even huge hotels in Macau, they have very slim teams. So I think it will have an impact to take off. The business will need time to take off. We need to to hire a lot of people everywhere, and again, we as Florence suggested, we need to work in partnership with probably companies from mainland China, from Hong Kong if they can come here. I think that trend will grow more and more. I also think that the clients are more demanding these days. In terms of risk management, for instance, that was something that no one was looking before. These cancellations, these reductions, these liabilities that events have. We also need to be careful with that. I think it will be a big aspect in the next in the events that will be coming to the city, and also technology. Technology has changed a lot, and what clients expect. There's clients that don't come to Macau, but they will participate in the events. So that's another area of concern, and that in the short term we need to address. So for me, these two areas, the technology in events and the risk management and everything that is behind that, will be very important to Macau.
You're singling out, let's say, for instance, technology and the if there's something that I guess many of us learned over these couple of years, because of the restrictions, obviously, is how to integrate the concept of hybrid events. And my question that I will also, of course, extend to the rest of the panel is the hybrid model. Is it kind of here to stay? How do you see this moving forward in terms of course, people joining the events without, of course, physically being here, like a mixed approach?
Well, I need to be honest. I think in our, what we call MICE, you call meetings, business meetings, incentives is travel paid by companies, exhibitions. This business, people love to travel. They love to travel to see each other for the pleasure of it as well. And it's very important. So I think the hybrid mode will exist, but will not be that big. But it's convenient for many people, people that is tired of travel, companies that want to cut costs. So in this case, it will be useful, and it's here to stay. If you tell 2 years ago that we would have a meeting online, everybody look at each other. Really? No, thanks. But now everybody, oh, sure, let's meet online tomorrow. That's it. So the hybrid mode will be the same, in my opinion. So, oh, we will have this conference, this exhibition, but you can go online. Okay, I cannot travel, but I will be online following what's going on. So it will not die, and in my opinion, it's here to stay, but it will not be the greatest thing until new technologies come up. We don't have them yet, like metaverse or something more integrative.
Augmented reality,
you actually can be more on the place.
A hologram of you, on the stage.
New technology will come for sure.
Yes. Interesting. Todd,
yeah,
about
I
technology.
agree with Bruno. But I think hybrid is not for the long time, because for some exhibitions, I think offline, I mean face-to-face is the best solution for some of the exhibition. Like for example, if we have kind of wine expo or something, you have to
That's right.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
For some other, let's see, for other exhibition like textile or garments, you have to see color and you have to touch it. So this, I do not believe this can be done by online, right? For the future, for some exhibitions, I think the best way is mainly we do it offline, but online is just something assistant, just help it for those guys who cannot attend or other reasons.
Interesting. And how about us, let's be a bit more visionary, multi-place events, right? Making use of 3D augmented reality technology in the future. What do you see in your crystal ball, Glenn McCartney?
Well, of course, some of our research over COVID-19, because COVID-19 has been an accelerator for the use of technology, from QR codes, track and trace, and big data. And one of the issues, of course, has been hybrid. Not even hybrid. For some stages, it was the only way to meet. So one of the issues after has been continuation. So for me in the meetings industry, research has shown us absolutely it's a human industry. Technology enhances the experience as a tool to support, but not a tool to replace. And that will always be the case, I think, for the meetings industry. It's a convenience thing. It will help your conference, but it will not be any way overarching way of replacing the MICE industry. So again, it'll be a tool like for Singapore, many meetings around the world to be used. The technology is there, but I think as we look for Macau, it's physical meetings, it's physical trade shows that the way forward, and we can use these tools like other destinations as a way to enhance the conference. But it'll be just there as an additional tool. It always has been. Even the last 20 years, we've always used technology to have our delegates have a better time. But now I think we're going to be using it much more. Even, for example, green meetings and stuff, we can scan codes and stuff. We don't need, it can be paperless more now and things like this. So technology maybe can be used for other benefits. For example, green events. We talk about sustainable events. So in that way, technology can be beneficial.
Florence, technology enhances but doesn't really replace. Would you agree? Enhances the experience but doesn't replace, I mean, yeah.
No, absolutely. I think what's really interesting is around the world with the opening, everybody goes virtual what? Hybrid no. Why? Hybrid is equivalent to the cost of holding two different events. Holding a virtual component and holding a face-to-face component is equal to holding two events. Most conferences, exhibitions, events cannot justify that cost from a revenue standpoint. So I think unfortunately we are looking at a situation whereby I think we know that virtual hybrid is here to stay. How it will be beneficial for the businesses remains to be seen because there is not a cost-effective manner for it to be run today. And I think based on the pent-up demand of the last 2 years, at least what we're seeing around the world and even in Asia Pac right now, it's nobody wants to do virtual because you can come back and meet face to face, and everybody is just dying to get on a plane and get somewhere, be together. So the virtual component is really challenging right now. So in all the statistics that we're seeing across hybrid event, across virtual events, the drop is easily 80 to 90%. So I think it will come back, but it kind of like it's a super bell curve right now, right? That you have been so deprived of face-to-face that now that you can have face-to-face, nobody wants virtual anymore.
Yes, it's like before we used to have like our people talking about the post-pandemic revenge shopping. Right now we have the revenge eventing. I don't know how to call it.
Yeah, the revenge of everything, the revenge of travel, the revenge of meeting face-to-face. But I think the point that it's made that it was very important is that I think it will change. Like I said, I think after maybe another year or so, it will taper off and digital will come back in a different manner because of sustainability. If we get past the COVID-19 conversation, there's a lot more conversation right now about climate change and sustainability and how organizations are saying that you should not get on a plane until there's an absolute reason. So then there will come the fact that, okay, maybe virtual needs to come back again, right? So that we can balance the kind of waste and emissions that we're bringing to the earth.
Bruno, about now talking about policies, we have addressed talent, we have talked about technology, public policies, and of course there's, I would say, an elephant in the room, which is the dynamic zero policy, right? But maybe you want to address that, and also beyond that, in terms of public policies, what can be done to facilitate the development and the coming back of the industry?
Well, about policies, COVID policies, I think there's not much to discuss. We are inside a huge country with 1.4 billion people, and the changes will be very, cautious and slow. So I think, in my opinion, we need to wait patiently until the policies change for Macau. We cannot afford in Macau to have the borders closed with mainland China. That's our only revenue stream now, 100%. So we have to be aligned with mainland China in this policy for, I think this will last for I don't know, 1 or 2 years. Let's see, or 6 months, nobody really knows. So I think in terms of policies from the local government, even today, I was in a seminar organized by IPIM, the institute that promotes the mice in Macau, and I think the region is starting to go to the subventions. And interesting that you were saying that you were thinking that the subventions come to the local companies, hotels, agencies, production houses. The subventions, the subsidies that the government used to give to companies in Macau is not to companies in Macau, it's for the clients directly. And I think this is one change that needs to be done. And in the region, all governments are going back to subventions. Subventions means, oh, I want this big event, 500 people, so I will pay, I don't know, $500 to each delegate so they can choose Macau. And this is common in Taiwan, in Singapore, even in Hong Kong, they have some subventions. In Bangkok, you name it, right? KL, everybody does this. Here, in terms of policy, we need to make it a streamline of the process. The paperwork, it's impossible to describe in this next hour, so I will skip that point. So that's something that the local government needs to streamline and make it easy. Just look at other cities. And I think also, let's think about Macau. So what makes Macau attractive compared to other cities? Hong Kong, Shanghai, I don't know, Bangkok. So we need to be competitive. And I think we lost over these years with this casino focus. We lost, and the governance we had. We lost a little bit what makes Macau different. The culture, the food, you know, the nightlife, leisure, happy times, right? So when organizers come to Macau, they think, oh, I'm going to Las Vegas. Fantastic. Las Vegas of the Far East. Then they arrive here and like, really? There's only one show, and where is the bar street? Where are the esplanades? This used to be Portuguese. Where is a big restaurant where I can bring my group? You know, we lost this, you know, it's a loss in translation. So we compete with cities that have these elements, and we kind of lost a city of leisure. Leisure where? People that live here, they know there's no more leisure in this city. Even in 2019 was kind of faded, right? Even the casinos, they closed down their leisure places, shows, restaurants. I mean, the focus was totally casino. So I'm very confident that this shift in the casino licenses will change a lot this perspective, because we have to come back to leisure, the real leisure city. So I think all the operators, casino operators, will be thinking about that and bringing elements that makes the city more closer to Las Vegas and not far away from Las Vegas.
Thank you, Bruno. And Todd, about, it's part of the plan. One of the three centers is a world center of tourism and leisure, right?
Yeah.
Bruno was pointing something out, and how do you see this?
Yeah. For the subsidies, for the
subventions, yes. You want to?
I find that the policies is quite different. Macau's policy and the many mainland Chinese cities policies. In mainland China policies, for some provinces, in order to attract or to organize more exhibitions and conferences, they will give money to the organizers. So it's different. You have to give money to the organizer to encourage them. You see, in Shenzhen or in Fujian province or even in Shandong province, they have a lot of policies. Even in Zhuhai, they give money to organizers. That's the only way to attract more events and exhibitions. One, for this. Second, for leisure life, for other things, you see a survey. I read an article. It's about the survey for the Chinese millennials. What they do in Las Vegas, what they do abroad. You see, it's quite interesting. It's quite interesting.
Report on China's
that's right. It's quite interesting to find that those young guys, when they go abroad, 90% is for see a museum or gallery or events or participation in sports events. Only 2%, surprisingly very low, is go to a casino. So I think the way for the next generation, for they go abroad, is quite different from what we expected. So that's why we have to rename this industry. It's just not only about MICE meetings, incentive travel. It should be exhibition, convention, and performing arts, or sports event. A lot of you have to integrate it together. This is in order to target the next generation.
Thank you, Todd. Glenn, you were nodding. I'm sure you have plenty of things to share with us because you've done research on this.
Yeah.
The new consumer patterns of the Chinese, mainland Chinese millennials, and not only from mainland China, and this opportunity that lies ahead of Macau, which is the gaming concession tender and the requirements. Actually, non-gaming plays a key role, and among the elements singled out, MICE, events, cultural tourism, arts, it's all there, right?
Yeah, but it's not uncommon throughout the world that cities say we want to have a list of things. Yeah. We list a whole pile of products, and that's probably what a tourism authority does, or a DMO, a destination management organization. They come up with what we want to be in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So it's not uncommon. What we need is strategy, and I think many things you're picking on here that over the years I've looked at and evaluated and be data-driven, and we're not enough data-driven on what decisions we make and how we make it and where we want to be. For example, the gaming concessions is for 10 years, right? And so as we go to next year, the COVID restrictions are probably still in place, and therefore we have to look at through 10 years, what does that mean? Some things you mentioned there right now, for example, public policy is a great area I've researched in the last 15, 20 years. We keep asking ourselves, the last 20 years, we keep saying, and I've been saying it too, the MICE industry, why, where, and how, and we've always questioned it could be better. And people say, so next year, the next 10 years, will it be successful? And I always say, it's not a case of yes or no, it's levels of success. Well, we could be much better if we did this, but we're going to be this because we didn't do this. And that's the reality, because we can do scenario A, B, and C, and D, and I've sort of tracked them out as well. But I'd love us to be D, right, where we're going to maximize, right? So it's how do you stitch all of this together? And I think you alluded to some of the issues right now. It's public and private sector collaboration at a level where everybody sits down and saying, for the betterment, not sometimes a bit disjointed how we work on policy. We're saying what you need, but they don't give, and they say what they need, and we have to deliver on. So there seems to be this, some brokering in between. How can we really deliver on this? Because we have this period of window, and again, I come back to my point, the last 2 or 3 years has been the downtime to reflect. And as we go to next year, the 10-year window starts. The clock starts ticking. Where are we at? Are we springboarding into MICE on all these other products like event industry and so forth? So I think the public and private collaborative has to really change in how we work that out. And I think one issue, which is one of my favorite areas of research, is city branding. And you say entertainment city. You have to be very clear to these new generation of 30-year-olds who are traveling. They know what a city is offering because the branding reflects it. They know Vegas, they know London, they know Paris. It's very clear what they're going for. City of romance, Paris, and they will, and Bangkok and Sydney. So Japan, they know straight away. And I think it's over the years, it's something we really have to work on a lot more and be really pinpoint what is the Cotai Strip, for example, the destination, because that is where all the major MICE facilities are. So I think and that takes a long time. That's not immediate. It's work that we should have been doing, and it's work that we should really, really accelerate so we can benefit and springboard. So I think those two issues of public-private collaboration, which we're glad you brought up, and the branding, the city branding, the public and private sector agree, have a buy-in. This is the way forward, like an entertainment city and so forth, so that the consumer knows straight away what Macau stands for, and so you can get those visitors. You mentioned that these new visitors, these new leisure seekers that want to do predominantly non-gaming and a bit of gaming, for example.
You're talking about collaboration in the. There was a few weeks ago, last month actually, when we were at the British Chamber of Commerce talk. You did mention building alliances, right? Because this is something that was also mentioned by Florence and Bruno and Todd, which is bringing all stakeholders together, right? What is the role is the government doing enough in that respect? I mean, what could be done to push things forward?
Well, you guys are on the ground and face us every day, drumming up the business, so you know the reality. I know from looking at other jurisdictions and looking at how the MICE industry has accelerated, how Vegas did it. So we just look at
how about the best practices in that respect? That if
collaborative. I mean, equitable collaboration where everybody is a buy-in on the small businesses, the suppliers, the venue operators. Everybody has a say in saying this is what we think. So, and to my point about, and I think we all agree, is something we haven't done very well over the years is we have to be really data-driven and evidence-based why we're doing a particular thing. Why are we doing it, and where we expect that to take us? And so I think you will all agree that through that, data is a very important thing. Sometimes we do things and we just do things, but there's no close the loop. There's no how did it end up and why? And I think that will be very important as we go forward, given we have that 10-year as I get coming back with the gaming concessions.
So not necessarily only top down, but something that will be more of a bottom up, top down, multi.
Yes, all of that, and I think again our panel will be much more in a position to talk about that from a business perspective than me.
Florence, I think you may share with us, I guess, talking about some best practices of an integrated approach, the role played by the government and the different stakeholders. Seen from there, what would you like to share with us as a way forward?
Yeah, so really interesting conversations from the panels. I think two things I would share that I just picked up during your conversation. So first and foremost, I think in terms of the government helping the industry to bring meetings, events, incentives back to the city. The usual stuff that was done by all the destinations in terms of providing incentive, that's sort of been there, done that. But what's really interesting and progressive right now is there are countries that are providing incentive for what if my event get cancelled, postponed, or delayed because of the pandemic. So it's very targeted to say that if your event is impacted by the pandemic, the government provides some level of funding. So I think that goes to address some of the issue that a lot of organizers have around certainty or uncertainty of placing an event somewhere in the world. The other thing that is really interesting is you talk a lot about tourism. And what's really interesting is a lot of destinations around the world right now, it's also talking about economic development. So how does a conference and exhibitions drives and support economic development of the city and country? So in several countries and cities, this function sits under the Ministry of Economic Development or Trade and not necessarily under tourism. So, and I think that is an important point because how the industry players will come together with the government to build a legacy for the industry, whether is it in a green economy or in a fintech economy or whichever economy that Macau and eventually Greater Bay China wants to build, needs to have an economic industry focus and not necessarily only from a tourism standpoint. So I would say that these are the two main points that kind of really jump out at me that I kind of see could be really interesting for you to look at.
Thank you, Florence. We will, in a while, be addressing competition cooperation in terms of the different jurisdictions in the region. But I guess many of those who are joining us here at FRC Cunha Foundation would like to join the conversation, jump in. So the floor is open for remarks and also questions to the panel. So who would like to start? Well, yes, please, Professor Kevin Heinen.
Yeah, I mean, having been away and then come back, I mean...
Welcome back.
One of my big... what kind of struck me when I was walking around the exhibition at the Venetian the other day is just the scale of the infrastructure that we have in Macau. I mean, it is quite immense, and to put on a very, very large exhibitions, I think I would find it difficult to find other destinations. If you're talking about ideas about USP, etc., that going forward, that Macau could develop in this kind of sector, that perhaps, what we don't really do well enough is telling the world, not just about casinos, etc., but about that infrastructure that we have to support events. On the other hand, what we kind of, if we are going to go down that route and look at large-scale events and exhibitions as a part of our USP here, which could be done, is that we would need to attract large numbers of staff, of talent, and maybe that is through, often through, if you want part-time staff who are going to be working in that kind of industry, it's student helpers, and so you've got to have a pretty good kind of basis for, who are very open to be working in that kind of industry on a part-time basis. And so I think the education side of things, alongside the infrastructure and the technologies, and the whole fact that this kind of industry is based upon a whole kind of social geography of sociability, that people are social humans, and we are going to carry on being that way since the first big great exhibitions in London and Paris back in the 19th century that kind of transformed the way in which cities and urban planning took over. And I think Macau has a tremendous, if you look at some of the infrastructure that is still in existence in Paris or London from that kind of era, then you can also look at some of the kind of replications that we have here, which and behind those facades, the tremendous infrastructural spaces that you have here is amazing. No?
Thank you, Kevin. So we're talking about hardware, right? The issue of hardware and software. Hardware being our competitive edge, right? We do have here in Macau. We have built this capacity primarily over the last 15 years or so. Bruno, Todd, and Glenn, would you like to address this issue and make some comments following up on what Kevin Henry was saying?
Well, just my previous remarks have to do with that. We really have a good infrastructure here in terms of hotels. But once you leave the hotel, it's like in Vegas. We are kind of in the desert. There's not much to be done. But I totally agree with Glenn, and you were asking about the best case studies about the public and private alliances and the best practices in the region. The best destinations, they always have a convention bureau that is formed with the government and the private sector, because it's this alliance that makes the city stronger, and then they address all the issues in the city and they position the city the way it should be.
We also have
often the convention
here, right?
bureau involves the police, for instance, and not only the tourism board, or the police, the municipality, whatever, and they all have a body where each of them has like shares. Of course, the government is the boss, but the private companies are included in the decisions, and I think in Macau there's this, not even the governments, different governments, government departments talk well with each other, but not even considering that. They don't want to work with the private sector. They think like, oh, this would be like weird or corrupt. If I collaborate with some private companies, it would look weird. So there's a total separation between the public and the private sector, and the private sector doesn't coordinate as it should. It should coordinate. So I think that's where we should start, exactly by revamping the way we organize the sector, by having a real convention bureau, and by starting addressing a strategy for 10 years. Totally agree.
You said some of my research goes back 10, 15 years. We were saying this 10, 15 years ago. So what will make the change today? I think we're here today. How can we then make these changes, because we know these were the issues. We need a convention business bureau that we're talking about alliances, and just to the point where we're talking about tourism and economics and that intertwined. But we talk tourism strategy. I think Cotai Strip has a wonderful inventory of rooms, and what it has is second to none. It absolutely is correct. What they have, new product came online, Londoner, Galaxy, you got new product coming on. Really around the world, if you look at product coming online, Macau really has fantastic product. So where is the gaps? Where is the gaps? I mean, casino will be always king in terms of the position. What we want to do is how do we get some more non-gaming and called diversification and MICE. And I think one of the issues is alliances. For example, you need the airports, airlines, everything else has to facilitate this growth. So you can say, I want this market, but how are you going to get the market? So I'm an academic, so it just becomes theory. It becomes conceptualizing. In reality, is how do you make it practically applied? That means you have to look at the infrastructure that brings the loading in. So it's not just a one man. It's not between two. The integrated resorts have to deliver because the public sector said this is what you must do underneath the new gaming concessions. But there's a whole lot of more players that have to be involved to make this truly happen. In my opinion.
And one thing, thank you, Glenn. Todd, you obviously have you're pretty acquainted and familiar with the model just next door. I mean, in the mainland and particularly in the Greater Bay Area.
Yeah.
So I'd like to ask you to share with us your views on competition vis-a-vis cooperation, how to bring about a win-win situation with the neighboring cities in terms of, because we are under the same, especially during this period, we are under the same dynamic zero policy. So what can be done in that respect?
Well, actually, for our neighboring city, Zhuhai, it has its own advantage, but for Macau, its own advantage. But we have to think about how to coordinate with especially Hengqin. You see, many people proposed events taking place together at the same time concurrently. Here, meetings, their exhibition here meetings. But for me, I think we have to think about Hengqin, because this is the nearest place, and also now the new policies were going to be worked out to make all people go through two places more conveniently. But we have to think about what is good about Hengqin. For our industry, Hengqin now, they don't have a venue for exhibition, but there are some places very good for team building. I think there is a camping center in Hengqin. Of course, we have Hengqin, Changlong. Those places are very good for team building and for events, for conferences. Some part, maybe it's better to do it in Macau. Some we can move to Hengqin. But the key to make this successful is there should be
mobility.
Mobility is key. Mobility is visa-free or visa expansion to make it very easy to go through these two places.
Yeah. Mobility, free movement of people, of services, of goods, and of capital to make it happen.
That's right.
Would someone else like to join in the conversation? Some remarks, some questions for the panel? Wonderful, perfect. Please.
Okay. Hello, my name is Augustus.
Augustus, welcome. Thank you.
I can tell Macau hasn't done enough the past 15 years. If you compare to Las Vegas, Vegas has about 150,000 rooms. Macau is only 40,000, but if you talk about suitable for MICE, it's only about 30,000. Obviously, there's something compared to Singapore. So, but because of the gaming is so strong in the past 15 years. So if you look into the infrastructure to MICE, it's just not competitive enough. But we can leverage something through our neighbor city, like how to use the international airport in Hong Kong in the future. Also, Zhuhai Airport, and how to differentiate the city branding, as Glenn said, between Hanging and Macau. Because I can tell you now, what happened in Hanging now is try to compete with Macau rather than to cooperate each other. And I think most important now is the Macau government just not doing enough in terms of promote Macau. They're doing a lot of promotion in terms of how to promote the tourism in Macau, but not in MICE. But if you compare to Singapore, the Convention Bureau in Singapore, as well as the Las Vegas Convention Bureau, they spend billions of dollars just to promote MICE, rather than the tourism spot. I mean, obviously, the tourism spot in Macau is obviously very important, but I think after these 3 years, a lot of the MICE partners or the key players in the industry just forgot about what's in Macau. If we don't do anything now, I think it will take another, 10 years? I can tell you my specialties is in association events and exhibitions. The first wave in Macau, it was back in 2009. It took us almost like 10 years back on track. If we didn't take, if we didn't get this COVID-19 event, 2020 would be the best year for Macau. But unfortunately, COVID happened, all these events got canceled. It was very sad. So I think if the government don't do anything now, it would take us another 15 years. It would just drag on and drag on. Yeah. So if Macau really wants to do MICE, I think government has to step up very quickly. In terms of promotion, in terms of the subvention program, obviously subvention program is competing with Hong Kong, Singapore, as well as the cities in China. And, yeah, exactly. So this is my comments.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Augustus. And plenty of things to unpack here. Who would like to start? Bruno. This is in many ways in line with a few things that you were sharing with us earlier. The time is now. I guess that's the message from Augustus, right?
Yes, I know Augustus for many years, and we've been in many battles together. Yeah. I think Macau government, in this case, needs to wake up, because it's been dormant in the last 2 years, and we don't see anything happening, and everybody's, I think, is starting to get nervous. So what's going on? They took some pill and they're sleeping. I mean, not only public-private sector could be working together, but I think the institutions in Macau, they got into this, we can't receive visitors, let's see what we can do, let's do something in mainland China. I think the strategy really needs a revamp, complete different approach, and needs to be more aggressive, definitely. We need to get prepared for the future battles, right?
One thing is that, go ahead.
Those who are in the industry, they know what I'm talking about.
Yes. One thing is, maybe we can bring this into the conversation. This concern, well, of course, we had G2E Asia relocating, let's see if temporarily or not, to Singapore this year. And this concern that as time goes by, if we don't catch up, then it might be challenging to bring back
it's very
this
hard.
kind of, yes.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Everything.
I think just Augusta says, if we don't work hard enough, I mean privately or publicly, from the government, from our stakeholders, the last decade will be waiting for us. Like take G2E for example. They choose Singapore because about the policies. It's convenient for it. Of course, the industry is needs, but if we have to find a solution, this will not be back. And actually, G2E is the only really trade show in Macau. For other trade shows, it's not so professional or target to market, but G2E is the real one.
Glenn, you've been talking about doing research on branding and about branding Macau as a business tourism destination, an events, trade show destination. And you've been casting an eye on the strategy by the authorities. What would you suggest in this respect?
I think the comments are all very valid here, and I've been listening in here. The messaging and how we go out. It comes down to you have to sell Macau. I mean, you're going to sell it to convention. You go to London and PCO. You're up against the competition. At the end of the day, is how do you sell Macau and win the meetings and conferences and so forth. And so, yeah, of course, the branding image. I could talk a long time about it. And I've looked at it over the years, how we position Macau differently. And I come to your point. I think Heng Ching is a game changer for Macau if it's handled. We mentioned some of the ways we should be handling. I think I recently did a talk, 5 game changers, and my top game changer for Macau is Heng Ching, and how we collaborate with Heng Ching. I keep using that word tonight too much, maybe, but how we work with Heng Ching in a way that we can both can benefit each other. We're not competing. We mentioned, for example, the lack of rooms in Macau to build a convention industry, healthy one, because a lot of the rooms are the casino focus and so forth, right? So how can we then, Heng Ching can be that platform. So I see so many ways that we could work with Heng Ching for the synergy between how we can work. So I think Heng Ching is something we should be looking at much more. Even right now, I think we are, but I think we should be looking at it much more. And you mentioned, for example, airport clusters. I've been looking at airport clusters, for example, as a means to bring in more traffic. I mean, visitor traffic, for example, Zhuhai Airport, Guangdong Airport, Hong Kong Airport. So we look at clusters, for example, within that. So I think there is great opportunity. But coming back to I think the commonality of our conversation here, these alliances and the collaborative approach. We know there's solutions to some of these problems, not all of them, but it's just like how we can make it happen, and as soon as possible, like you say. The clock is ticking, like as we go to next year, as we said at the beginning of the conversation. So yes.
Thank you. Florence, seen from a vantage point, I would say, and also not only seen from Singapore, but from either a global or more region-wide Asia-Pacific perspective, when it comes to the competition for branding one jurisdiction, one city, one place as a business tourism destination. And how would you assess, how would you gauge the current race in business tourism and events in the region? Who's leading the way and why, and what are the trends that you are witnessing?
Tough question. Very tough one, Jose. And you can be diplomatically correct with this one.
No, it's okay. You can hear it. Free flow conversation.
I think first of all, I would say that I've learned quite a fair bit from what the panelists talk about, and I think you are indeed in quite a challenging situation, geographically, and also in terms of how your GDP is made up, right? From a tourism, gaming dollar standpoint. I think that's a big challenge that business events or MICE have to fight with in order to truly deliver value or prove the value that you bring to the city. And now, if you're really looking at the region, I would say that there's almost like two different worlds and two different tiers, two different kind of city. You have the Singapore, which is very much like a Hong Kong, Macau type of all-in-one business plus a bit of leisure. But then you have some very other unique destinations like Australia, New Zealand, and Thailand that I think offers a lot within the country, not just from a business standpoint, but really, I think in the post-pandemic world, what we look at a lot in terms of destination is the open space, the outdoors. What does each destination brings to you besides the hardware, the hard infrastructures or convention centers and rooms? Where else can you bring your people to for the out of a shell, out of a space kind of experience? That's something that people are really looking for. Can you give me that outdoor experience that truly matters? And I say that, I think Australia, New Zealand, Thailand have a lot of unique advantage that even Singapore doesn't have as much unique advantage in that space. Now, the other thing that I would say that is also very interesting to think about as you look at your larger strategy, I think the entire conversation around corporate social responsibility, how governments are holding conferences and meetings around the world, and how corporations are deciding where to place their conferences and meetings and events are now very much driven by social impact. So not just a case of what carbon emissions am I creating by going to more places or moving people across large spaces, but also a case of how do I become more inclusive in bringing different diversity groups into the space so that we can become more inclusive. So I think these are some of the key things that actually we see coming out of RFPs, that coming out of organizers who are saying that we need to be not just about bringing people from one place to the other. We need to be leaving a lot more of a social legacy, be better for what we left the city after we are gone. And I think that's something important to think about. As you create the infrastructure, how do you let people and organizations feel good when they come to Macau and what they leave behind?
Thank you, Florence. Philippe Fernandes, I believe you would like to join the conversation and share something with us.
Thank you,
So
thank
please
you.
go ahead.
Well, thank you, everyone. I basically pretty much appreciate what you've all said. It covers most of what I was going to comment. I just want to reinforce it a little bit regarding in respect to the policies. I think all over these decade or so, I think we've missed a lot of opportunities in building, in truly diversifying the city into something else. Okay, the reality, we always go back to gaming, but without having the government embracing gaming. Obviously now COVID hits, reality hits. We are to moving on to the next new 10 years. Where do we stand? I think in terms of MICE, I think it's more about how should I say, commitment. How do you position MICE? It's part of the map. How hungry are you in catching that piece of business? Because you've mentioned about rooms. Yes, now we have, in relative terms, we have plenty of rooms. Now it's how do we fill those rooms? and worse yet, the concessionaires have committed to build more. Mm-hmm. How are we going to do that? We have to be very creative. Position ourselves. How we have to find a reason. It's always we always go back to the same question. Why do we attract them? Why do they choose Macau? We have to give them a really good reason for them to be here, and obviously, just the cultural side seems like not enough. Just the gaming side maybe is not enough. I think it's a combination of everything. The policies have to be in tune. Events going out, not just inside the casinos, properties. We have to go out. There's a huge demand. It has always been a huge demand, bringing events outside. But the policies are not in sync. These days, we do an outdoor event, 10 o'clock, hey, noise, stop. I mean, are we going to do this? No, I don't think these policies need to be updated drastically to cope with what the future lies ahead for everyone. Yeah, that's my comment. And thank you.
Thank you, Philippe. I would go for a couple of more contributions. Maybe ladies first, Professor Ling, and then Paulo Rego.
Okay, thank you for sharing. It's very impressive. And I have been thinking the challenge that you have mentioned before, the loss of talents, and you try to attract the talents back. But here, the talents we have been talking about are those already work in the industries, right? But I had another concern. That is the talents. We are talking about the younger talents, the potential talents from the younger generations. I'm not sure whether you have noticed that the numbers of high school students who apply for the majors related to MICE and also the tourism industry, hospitality industries is actually declining very rapidly. And my concern is that 3 years or 4 years later, we might not have talents who has started in majors in MICE or tourism and hospitality. I mean, fewer and fewer. So here is my concern. I'm not sure whether that you also think this is a challenge for our industry, and whether what are the other things that we could do to promote, to attract more like the younger generation, I mean the high school student, to apply for our majors, right? Thank you.
Thank you. Paulo Rego, the Director of Plataforma.
Hello, hi to everybody. I would like to focus 5 minutes on rebranding the city, because in this issue, there's always this problem of the soup and the package. Rebranding, we can build another package, but if the soup is not there, it's not going to work, right? And the soup is not there. It's not happening yet. Macau is not prepared for that, and we cannot sell Macau as something that is not, right? So we need to focus on that. When you think on rebranding, we need to understand what we are building. That's what we need to sell, right? And I would say the first opportunity is what everybody is facing as a problem. The gaming will not be there as strong as it were. The government is saying that. Everybody knows that, and it's a problem for everybody because everybody is asking where is the money coming from. we can start selling that. It's not coming from the gaming. If the world understands that, maybe they can also collaborate with Macau bringing the events. We need to start selling that Macau is not going to produce a GDP based on gaming, but on MICE. There is a plan. And we need to sell that. We can start selling that today. The other comment I would like to pose is, in terms of space, Macau is really small. Anqing is bigger, but I don't think it's enough. But Great Bay Area, and China government is asking us to sell it. Let's sell it. If Macau is the best one selling Great Bay Area, there is a package, because Great Bay Area is there, right? Guangdong is there, 180 million people, the best Chinese food I know, and a lot of nice things to do. So I would say we should eventually start to look at our problems as our first opportunity.
Thank you, Paul. One last question, anyone, before we wrap it up from the stage. I will now. We still have a few more minutes. I would now ask you to share with us to address the questions that the audience has just raised, and also to share with us your final take on the discussion. I will start with Florence.
Yep. So I think I would like to pick up on that question around talent. Um, Interestingly, we're seeing the same pattern in many cities and countries across the region. That is, I think the last couple of years have struck the students very hard about how collapsible the industry is. And I think that has shaken a lot of confidence in young kids wanting to be part of the industry. So that's probably going to take a bit of a time for that to recover. But that said, I think, with the younger generation, there's also been a lot of conversations around it's an industry that is hard work and not necessarily very high salary. And I think the conversation around that we need to change is to really help them understand that it can be more aspirational and inspirational than what they think it is, which is hard work and low salary. And I think that's our job, right, from an industry leader standpoint, to paint a future and a vision for them to come back to. So hopefully the troubles of the pandemic will regain their confidence as everybody starts opening up. But I think we still need to address, because the young today, they have a lot of other distractions. They have a lot of other sexy options out there, in the e-commerce space, in the financial space, in the crypto space, and the metaverse and the technology. I think we need to be able to articulate why they need to be part of MICE. And I think the other thing that we really need to look at from the short-term perspective, it's mid-career transition. There are in our industry always people who enter the industry who don't come from a major in hospitality or events. And I think in the short run, when you are fighting against many other cities and countries for talent, you may want to look at how do you help mid-career move into events and hospitality in that space.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Glenn, you're an educator, you a researcher.
Yes.
How do you look at this, the issue of, on the one hand, grooming talents, young talents, and also this mid-career upgrade, and the whole discussion, and anything you would like to share with us as your final word?
Oh, I think in this, the talent issue, of course, is a challenge given the fallout the last few years globally. But I think, I know I'm an educationalist, but I like to come back to the issue on
branding,
the branding,
yeah.
because I think the talent has been discussed somewhat. We understand that in ways that we can address that. MICE industry can benefit the gaming industry. We know that from the Vegas model, right? And branding is a very complex thing. I keep saying that it has to be, like you say, valid, believable, and measurable. So you can't say something and you're not, and people say, hey, I came here and you're not that, you know? And so we all understand that, and that's very negative on social media. We understand the snowball negativity can result if you don't deliver on a promise when people arrive here. So I totally agree what you mean. If we're building the brand as a MICE destination, it's very important. One thing that I think when I studied Vegas and I studied the MICE industry and study some of this, I mean, it has a big economic impact beyond just the MICE industry. It goes into other sectors, small restaurants and so forth. It really can benefit the economy if we just focused, like you mentioned. And one thing I think we started the conversation. One thing I think was missing when I looked at the list, and I guess it's all part of the list, is the nighttime economy. And when I study the nighttime economy in Europe and so on, is maybe 20-30% of the tourism budget comes from what happens after 6 o'clock, restaurants and bars and taxi drivers, and the amount and the employment that goes into this. Macau's nighttime economy is really not existing in any big way. We have to build that up, because the MICE industry is a lot of it's social. We understand that from the visitor's perspective. The research we've done on a visitor to MICE, we go for 50% the meeting and 50% is after 8 o'clock and the networking. And so a great MICE destination needs to have all these other things to grow. So, for example, the nighttime economy for me should be a focus. How can we rejuvenate something that is practically not existing? Not just the bars, the clubs, but the restaurants and the policies. For example, you can put a restaurant out on the streets and stuff like this. I think we've talked about many issues here
even
today.
The night markets,
There's a whole pile of things that happen in the evening times. You go to night markets and that spur people to the destination. Like Singapore has the night markets and the street markets and stuff that people are attracted to in the evening time after the meeting. So maybe too much discuss this panel, but I think to your point, we could really add more discussion around that. in make, you know, and I think, sorry, there's a lot to add in at the very end there, but I think it's something we should be thinking more of.
Interesting, Glenn. Thank you. Todd, you'd like to pick on, hooking up on something that was just said, the question about branding that Paulo Rego was raising, and also now this issue that was also addressed by Bruno, with now stressed by Glenn with regards to leisure, nightlife, you know, feeling good. But maybe we need that. We need, I didn't say anything else yet. But maybe how about the restrictions? You know, I'm not only talking about COVID restrictions. I mean, talking about other restrictions after 10 p.m. and all of that. Yeah.
You see, I noticed from the tender requirements from the government for the new concessions for the operators, the potential operators of gaming. For the casinos, there are 10 requirements, right? But 4 of the requirements is involved, and they have a very close connection with MICE industry, convention, exhibition, sports, and performing arts. So that's why I suggest that we have to rename this industry. Just kidding. But anyhow, I agree with you. We have to get a lot for those attendees to exhibitions and conference. Just after the exhibition is closed, they have to get a lot of to do in this city, and this is a very good way to bring more revenue to the whole city. So that's why I think both the government and also the operators should work together. About talent, this question, the only way is to make this industry attractive. They can earn more money. This is the only way, right? That's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was your last remarks. And last not least, Bruno Simões, what comes across your mind as a wrap-up for this talk?
I think we discussed a lot of things has to do with strategy, vision, and then the policies and the regulations. We all come across different topics, promotion, selling points, whatever. 80% depends on the vision for this sector and the policies and the regulations. So I think we have to wait and see what happens.
And have another roundtable, hopefully
Next
against
year.
a more bullish business environment. Thank you very much to all. Thank you very, very much our guest speakers, Bruno Simões, Todd Cai, Glenn McCartney, Florence Chua. All of you joining us here at Rui Cunha Foundation, those joining us via Facebook Live, and of course, as always, thank you very much, Dr. Rui Cunha Foundation. It's been a privilege, this cooperation over the last couple of years. And hopefully, most likely, we will be back in November. So stay tuned. Thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you.